Good day, folks. This is Greg Judy from Green Pastures Farm, my wife Jan, and today's topic is our hair sheep production, and a lot of the questions we get, a lot of people are out there interested in raising sheep, and so today's a good opportunity. Jan had a lot of questions that she's written down from you folks and some of her own, and so we're going to talk sheep.
Okay, so why do you think people want to get into sheep? Always heard, pain in the butt.
Yep.
They're going to die. They're just bred to die.
Yeah. I went to a conference years ago, and the guy said, yeah, sheep wakes up every morning, and the first thing out of his mouth is, today's a good day to die. And, the audience erupted and thought that was funny. But, folks, if you get the right kind of sheep, that's a misnomer. They don't die. Occasionally you'll get one to die of old age, but, that's going to happen. But if you get a good hardy band of sheep, they're a wonderful asset to any farm. They add an additional income stream. Like just say you're a cattle farmer, you may be running pigs. You can put sheep in there. It's just another animal that you have to sell to market to help keep you on that farm and keep you in the black every year. If you have a lot of weeds,
yeah,
what do they do to the weeds, Jan?
They kind of like them.
What do you mean they kind of like them?
Well, so we had this one farm, a lot of multiple rose bushes, wild berries, and dewberries. And Greg's like, we need a brush hog. We don't own a tractor, thus we don't own a brush hog. What are we going to do? And so how did we get into sheep, Greg?
That's why we got into sheep.
Well, first off, let's be honest, we got into goats.
Yes, Jan wanted to get goats. And I'm like, I don't want goats. But she got some goats. Something they
gave them. They were free.
Yeah, they gave them to you.
That should have been that should have been a warning right there.
There's a money maker, free goats. So Jan went out and bought some Premier netting.
Yep.
Put the goats in there, and you kind of made it through that first summer.
Yeah, but then the drought hit.
Man, it was a lot of work.
And
moving that netting.
And then if I didn't get it super tight and it was any kind of a sag, it just was like taunting the goats to jump over it, even though the wire was hot. And then they did learn when I went running around with the four-wheeler and I put rocks in a bucket, they'd come running back. And and then
goat will usually come back home.
Yeah, especially with a little bit of grain. And then we put them on the Doc's farm, and we got more goats because I hadn't learned anything yet. And they did okay. They bred, and we got a Billy, and Billies really stink, and they were on top of the barn. They were on top of cars and vehicles and four-wheelers.
Yeah, goats are different. They're just a little different. Yeah. But we decided that we were going to pursue sheep, and because they're a lot easier to keep in, the parasite resistance, for good, you get the right breed, they're really good.
So how did we develop our breed?
We were very fortunate. I spent hours and hours on the internet looking for St. Croix breeding stock.
And why did you decide on St. Croix?
Well, St. Croix, after doing a lot of research, they have a mechanism in their gut. They don't know what it is.
Where do they come from?
The island of St. Croix. And so they were actually dropped off on St. Croix by African slave traders is the history that I heard. And that was done like in the 1700s. And when they dropped them off, those sheep were wool sheep. And over the centuries, they reverted back to hair, the ones that adapted.
And what's hair sheep mean?
Hair sheep means that's what sheep have in the wild.
But
sheep normally, a wild sheep like a mountain sheep, they don't have wool on them, they have hair. It's the humans that bred the wool onto sheep. Right. And so our sheep that we're talking about here are hair sheep, the St. Croix. And the St. Croix does have the highest parasite resistance of any sheep that is in the United States. They were actually brought into the United States in the 1900s, early 1900s. And they used them to build the Katahdin. So the Katahdin is a three-way cross. I think there's a Gulf Coast native and the St. Croix, and I forgot the other one. Anyway, there's three of them, but it's the St. Croix that gives them that parasite resistance. So I just decided to go pure St. Croix for our rams, our breeding animals, and then I found a problem. I couldn't find enough ewes. They just weren't out there. So we started bringing them to Katahdin and Dorper. Dorper didn't work out very well for us. Florida Native worked good. Barbados worked good.
Yeah.
And so that's what we've got. We've got a mixture, but St. Croix Rams are pretty much what we try and stick to for our breeding.
Yeah. And we were very fortunate. There was a gentleman down the road, about 5 miles from us, who had some heritage breeds. And
I asked him, I said, how'd you develop these things to not worm? He goes, Greg, he said, I just stuck to my guns and I just refused to worm them.
Yeah.
I said, how'd that work out for you? He goes, well, I lost a bunch of them. And so he didn't tell me how many he lost. All he told me was the ones that made it without worming, those are the ones that he built his flock from. And so he let those St. Croix develop their natural parasite resistance. And, you know, I'll give you a straight up. The better sheep production that you can have is rotation.
Right.
Keep them rotating. If you have sheep, let's just say you have a 5-acre pasture, and that's what you're going to run your sheep on. Don't start with too many. You'll get overstocked. And put a rotation on that 5 acres that you can give at least 45 to 60 days rest before you come back. That helps break that parasite cycle. If you come back before that, the sheep are going to be ingesting parasites, and it's just this closed circle thing. It's not good. I tell people the best medicine for a sheep is what, Jim?
green grass.
Fresh.
Yeah, fresh.
A fresh, rested green grass pasture. That's the best medicine you can give them.
So do we worm?
No.
Just
no.
I just want to. I know that, but you know.
worm sheep. You're putting a crutch under them, and you'll always worm sheep. Once you start worming, forget it. That's why I don't recommend going to a sale barn and buying sheep. If you buy sheep out of a sale barn, they've been wormed. About 99% of them have. And you're buying a babied animal, and when you bring it home and you don't worm it, just get ready, they're going to die. A bunch of them will.
Right. Or if you bring them home, move them.
They're still going to die.
Yeah, but I mean, let the ones die who are going to die, and
it's a rough thing to go through. We did it. I wanted to build the flock faster, so old Greggy, we bought a semi-load with another gentleman, and he took 600, and we took 240. You can get 840 sheep on a semi. A sheep semi. There was like 5 layers.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was crazy. It looked like dog hutches in there or something. Anyway, we got those things here from Texas, and we had 77 inches of rain that summer. Which is crazy.
What was going on in Texas?
Yeah, a drought.
Right.
They came from 8 inches around San Angelo to Missouri. We've never had a rain like that since, but it rained 77 inches that year. And there was grass as tall as my chest, and those sheep were starving to death. They were walking around in that tall grass looking for sagebrush. That's what they were used to eating. And you can't get the dying stopped when you make that big a change. So I guess the lesson from that is buy adapted stock as close to you as possible, or make sure you buy them from somebody that don't have a bunch of baby sheep.
Right.
And what do I mean by baby sheep?
Oh, like they've been wormed, they've been coddled.
What else?
Well, we're going to talk about that.
Fed grain?
Yeah, I was going to say, that was my next question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm pulling that out.
Yeah, I know. And
I'll shut up.
Yeah. So another question we get a lot of is, do we feed grain to our sheep and through the winter? What do we do?
So I'm shaking my head. No, we don't. A common practice for most people is to get them up and they flush them. What's that mean, flushing them? Well, they feed them. They feed those ewes before they turn the rams in, and that gives you more twins because they'll drop more embryos and all that kind of stuff. You're supposed to get a higher twin rate. Folks, when you feed grain to your sheep, what you're doing is you're growing hoof. And now you're going to have sheep out there limping. I got a friend that came by, and he had these things on the side of his hip, on his belt, and you can tell they were hoof trimmers. And this guy had quite a few sheep, a couple hundred head, and I'm like, what are those? Oh, he said, I got to carry those with me all the time. I'm like, what? Well, yeah, he said, I go and check my sheep and move them and stuff. He said, I grab one up, and she's limping on her, she's walking on her elbows. She can't walk on her feet anymore. He's feeding grain. And I said, well, I've never trimmed a hoof in my life. He goes, no, there's no way. I'm like, no, never have. But if you feed grain, you're going to grow hoof and you're going to grow horn. Those two things. So don't do that. It's not good on the sheep.
Okay. So now we're in the middle of winter. So what's our feeding plan for the winter for the sheep?
So in the winter time, basically we're on our third pass now across our winter stockpile. So all the green's have been taken out. There's not much left out there, but there's still some dry matter. The sheep, we unrolled the bale for them the other day, kind of felt sorry for them. They didn't eat it. And it was good hay. It is clover. It had some orchard grass in it. The cows just been devouring it. The sheep wouldn't hardly touch it. They laid in it and they kind of picked through it. Our guard dogs went out and laid down in it. But the stockpile is getting thinner now. There's not hardly any green left in it. And so for the last 30 to 45 days before spring green up, we will give them a lick tub to get some protein. They're still eating that dry grass out there. There's not much in it. But if you can give them just a little bit of protein to help them break that down and they can get some good out of that grass, they do fine. So usually it's a third rotation around, we'll actually put a little protein tub out there.
And so why is it important right now to get those get protein into them?
Well, they're building lambs inside them, in the last 45 days before lambing is when about 80% of that lamb is grown. It's the same way on cows.
And humans.
Yeah. So don't limit the diet on your cows or your sheep right before they lamb or calve. It will show up when the animals are born. They're going to be weak, spindly, and they may not make it.
Right. So, here's a good one. So when do we shear our sheep?
You don't shear hair sheep. They don't need it. It sheds off so that they grow a real thick, we call it fleece or hair, whatever. It looks like a coat. And in the springtime, it just naturally falls off on the ground. And I wanted to go back and visit that protein tub just a little bit. Last year, we didn't give them any protein. And that's because we had really good stockpile. We got some good rains. And we had plenty of stockpile. But folks, when those sheep graze all the green out of that stockpile, there's nothing left. It's just dry, and it's been picked over. And there's, let's say it's this tall, and it looks like you took a leaf right through it. That's pretty meager pickings for your sheep, and you need to kind of help them out a little bit.
Yeah. So I think, and you've kind of said we don't trim our sheep. So.
No, you don't need to trim the hooves on your sheep if you don't feed grain.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
When do we wean our lambs?
When do we wean the lambs? We don't. The only ones that would get weaned would be ram lambs that we decide to keep as breeders. And so usually we lamb on pasture in May, first week of May. The rams are put into the ewes December 1st. And it's a 5-month gestation. So 5 months later, there's your baby lambs coming out on green grass in May when you have warm weather. Not January or February. That is a wreck. You'll lose 60-70% of your lamb crop if you don't put them up in a barn. Well, if you put them up in a barn, now you're fighting nature. Why don't we lamb in a barn? Well, first of all, there's no green grass in there. And the ewe, she's dropping all of her manure there in her pee, and now it's a breeding disease. You're going to have just all this disease in there. They don't need to be in a barn. Sheep don't like going in a barn, period. They'd rather be outside.
Then you're going to have lambs that aren't taken, you're going to have more orphan.
Yep.
And
it's just hard on them. So back to July, we get the rams up. That's when they're made into withers. We band them. And the ones we want to keep as breeders are put in with the old rams. And they go out onto their own ram pasture where they can't see, hear, or smell a ewe. In this instance, it's like 3 miles from where the ewe flock is.
So we're getting ready to sell a bunch of sheep in August, and I've got a lot of people who bought them, and they're getting 10 ewes and a ram. So
and a guard dog.
And a guard dog, a lot of them, and a wither. And why are they buying the wither?
Yeah, so when you're starting a flock and you take that ram away from those ewes, he's not going to be a happy camper. He needs a buddy. And the best buddy to put in with him is a wither.
So
yeah, so you can eat the wither.
You can eat the wither down the line. But so a lot of these people
what is a wither?
A wither is a castrated ram.
Okay.
So just because a lot of people don't know. So some of these people have 40 acres. They don't have the ability like we do to move them 3 miles down the road. So what do they need to do?
You need to build a ram mobile. And a ram mobile is basically 4 cattle panels, and you build a steel bar frame, you weld it to that cattle panel, and you put a caster on each corner, a wheel on each corner. You buy them at Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever. Get that wheel on each corner, and you want that cattle panel to be about 3 to 4 inches off the ground. That ram cannot get out of there. And you can push him around in the ewes, in the flock if you want to. He can't get with them. He's not going to get out of there. And he still gets his grass. Put your bucket of water, just hang it on the side of the ram mobile. Most of y'all probably heard of Justin Rhodes. He's got one. He got the design from us. And my good friend on our YouTube, Brent, he sent me a picture of it. The one that he built, that was a nice one. It's a ram mobile. And I got the design from a departed friend of ours, Neil Dennis.
Yeah.
And Neil called them his lawn mowers. He kept them in his lawn.
Right.
And he would mow his lawn with them all summer long, and they were withers. They weren't rams. And he'd mow his lawn with them, and then he said, I ate my lawnmowers. So in the fall, he'd literally harvest his lawnmowers.
So I've gotten some questions. So can you just put those rams in electric netting? Why can't you just do that?
To keep them away from the ewes?
Yeah.
That's a wreck. That's a wreck. Netting will not hold a ram when he smells the ewe in heat. He will not do it. He will charge through that netting. He'll jump it. He'll go through it. I don't care if he gets hung up it and he gets halfway electrocuted. He's going to those ewes. It's got to be a physical barrier. I had a good friend that ran some rams on the side of a big lake, and the ewes are on the opposite side of the lake. Sheep hate water. They absolutely despise it. Guess what? Those rams, they had 2 of them, they jumped in that lake and they swam. They swam that lake to get to those ewes. And he started lambing in February. Lost over 45% of his lamb crop. Because that lake did not stop those rams. So it's got to be a physical barrier, folks. I mean, they will get to those ewes unless you do a ram mobile. Okay.
So I'm going to just finish maybe with one more question. So when do we work our sheep and why do we work our sheep?
When do we work the sheep and why do we work the sheep? So we get the sheep up and we count the ewe lambs so we know how many of those we have to market. We go through the call ewes, the ones that are getting what we call a little bit, you see a little bit of bone coming into them. Those will be some that we sort out. They're just older age ewes. I tell people you want to do that around the 1st of August, sometime in August. Don't let your call ewes, the ones that have gotten thin from old age or whatever, get rid of those right then, because you don't want to keep them in September, October. All they're doing is getting thinner and they're eating your winter stockpile. That's grass you could be saving for your good ewes. So get rid of them. They're not going to magically put on weight from August to the end of September. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. All they're doing is eating precious grass and forage that your good ones can be eating.
Right. So we get them up 2 times a year. That's one reason why I like sheep, because we only mess with them.
They're not a lot of work.
No.
People say, oh, I got rid of them sheep. They're too much work. You got the wrong sheep, period.
Right.
We move our sheep, every couple of days. We've got them broke. We'll talk about that on another day. But we've got them broke to 1 hot wire.
Right. But we work them 2 times a year. Sometime in July, that's when we're pulling the rams out and we're deciding who's going to be a wither and who's going to be ram. And what do we do with those withers?
The withers are thrown right back into the flock.
Right.
They can't do anything. They're not going to breed anything. So just put them back on their mothers. Let the mother wean them.
And then
you don't want another flock of withers hanging around.
Right.
That's another flock.
Right. And then we pull them out. We get them up again in August to pull the rams out. And that's when we do our big marketing day.
Yeah.
And we go through and we decide how many withers do we have and how many withers we're going to keep. Because there's no need to carry, if you don't have them sold, sell them then.
Yeah. Well, one of the deals, folks, is a wither's going to eat just about as much as a ewe through the wintertime. So if you've got a ewe that's going to give you twins and you've got a wither out there that's just putting on meat, which one's going to give you the highest return? It's all about marketing your grass. Just remember that. You're trying to take your labor and your grass and turn it into capital. And then from that capital, you're trying to, maybe buy some more sheep or develop your land or a new water system or something. But you're always trying to produce more income from your farm.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about.
Right. Yeah, I was talking to a gentleman up in Iowa, and it was January, and it wasn't going well for him. He'd lost a lot of his lamb crop because he was lambing out of season. He was going to be getting his sheep up the next day to sort out the withers, so he didn't have any grass. And he said, well, but I'm hitting the Easter market. Well, how much did it cost him to keep those withers for the Easter market? And then the next day in Iowa, they had a blizzard. So I don't think he was working his sheep in the blizzard. Plus, I just think that would be horrible working in the cold like that.
Well, yeah, a lot of people, that's why they lamb in January, is to hit that Easter market. And, if I had to lamb in January, I'd just sell the flock. I'm not going to do that.
No.
You got to get them up in a barn. They call that crutching them. Not crutching them. I forgot the term now.
I don't.
Anyway, you put them up in a pen. I guess I don't know it because we've never done it, but people put them in pens. And we were in a large sheep operation down south Missouri. The guy ran 2,000 or 3,000 head of sheep. And he had a huge barn. He must have had, 500 pens in there. That's where he lambed at, was in that barn. And he had a cot and a wood stove in there. That's where he lived. He had to live in that barn all winter long with them sheep.
So what's the quality of life there, guys?
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
I mean that's
now
the
you're
whole
working.
thing.
You're working for the sheep.
Right.
Sheep's not working for you.
And that's the thing with holistic management or living, is also adding that quality of life.
Yeah.
So to me that's not worth it.
No. We better wrap up with that. I think we've got all the sheep questions. There's probably a dozen more we could talk about.
And submit those, and we'll try to.
If we left out something that you think that we should have covered, put a comment in there. We'll put it on the next. We'll
try to go back through.
Yep.
We're gonna start trying to do a few more of these because I'm so far behind on these videos and getting things that we need to kind of do this periodically. I think.
Yeah. I agree. With that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe. Jan's saying hit the like button. And you got to give the plug on the hand again.
And books.
greenpasturesfarm.net.
And down the line, just a heads up, there will be a new book coming out this year. So if you haven't read the first two books. Yes,
I've been working diligently on wrapping that up. So that's going to be cool. The third book's coming out.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what the name of it is.
I don't even ask me because I don't know. I don't get to read the book till it gets published.
It's going to be a good one though. We'll see y'all down the road. Take care.